The Georgia heat hit me the moment I stepped out of the cab, the humid air clinging to my tailored suit like a second skin. The scent of fried chicken, collard greens soaked in vinegar, and perfume from generations past floated from Big Mama's mansion, settling in my nostrils like a warning. 14 years. 14 long years I had avoided this place, this family, this suffocating legacy of petty greed and shallow affection. Yet here I was, suitcase in hand, walking up the cracked marble steps of a house that had always been too large, too loud, and too judgmental for me. I stopped at the double oak doors, taking a deep breath. Inside, I could hear the low hum of conversation, laughter, and clinking silverware. But the moment I stepped over the threshold, the air changed. It was as if the room collectively exhaled in anticipation, then froze, the sound of 100 people gone in an instant. Forks paused mid-air, lips parted in shock, and somewhere behind me, a gasp sliced through the thick humidity. "Aunt Viva," I said, my voice calm, even as my pulse began to race. She appeared like a storm, blocking the doorway with the precision of a linebacker in a floral dress. Her wide black hat threatened to topple the hallway sconces, and her eyes slitted at the sight of me, taking in my designer bag, my tailored suit, and my carefully controlled posture. "You are not invited for a reason," she announced, her voice carrying over the sudden silence like a gavel. She brandished a grease-stained paper plate of fried chicken as if it were a weapon. "Take your cheap suitcase and turn right back around. This gathering is for family and the faithful who actually cared about Mama Rose, not the thief who ran away to Chicago and never looked back." I stood my ground, calm, cold, calculated. "I did not come for your dry macaroni and cheese, Auntie," I said, my knuckles white around the handle of my Louis Vuitton carry-on. "I came because Mr. Henderson called me." At the mention of the lawyer's name, the tension in the room tightened like a violin string. Mr. Henderson, the family attorney, stepped out from the shadows. Tall, imposing, and unshakably professional, he adjusted his glasses before speaking, his voice cutting through the humid air with the precision of a scalpel. "I am afraid that is impossible, Viva," he said slowly, deliberately, "because Nia's name is the only one in the will." The plate in Viva's hand slipped. It crashed to the floor, shattering into a dozen pieces, each shard a symbol of her crumbling authority. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers erupted like a sudden storm in the foyer. I could see them, their faces frozen in disbelief, their judgmental eyes now tinged with panic. I felt a flicker of something in my chest. Grief, or maybe satisfaction. But I shoved it down. 14 years ago, this same family had thrown me out with nothing but the clothes on my back. Now, armed with knowledge, skill, and patience, I was back. And this time, I would not leave without justice. The room smelled of overcooked collard greens, fried chicken, and the faintly sour tang of stale perfume. Church members in their Sunday best clutched plates and purses, whispering behind fanned hands. Distant cousins I had not seen since I was a teenager stared with a mixture of curiosity and veiled hostility. The air conditioning struggled against the body heat of 100 people, but the chill of judgment in their eyes was colder than any machine could produce. Viva stepped forward, waving her left hand dramatically, as if to command the room's allegiance. "Who invited you?" she demanded, her voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "We didn't save a plate for you, Nia. You're not welcome here." I didn't flinch. My mind raced, cataloging every reaction, every flicker of fear, every gasp of shock. "By the way," I said, keeping my voice calm, "that dress you're wearing, I'm pretty sure Big Mama bought it with the money she saved for my college tuition the year you claimed you needed surgery." Viva gasped, clutching her pearls with the practiced flair of a soap opera star. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Around the room, murmurs turned into whispers, and whispers turned into full-on gossip explosions. Every church mother, every cousin, every nosy neighbor felt entitled to weigh in, their judgment raining down like an invisible storm. My cousin Kesha, the 28-year-old who still acted like a spoiled teenager, stepped beside her mother, a glass of sweet tea in hand. "Leave her alone," Mama Keisha said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "She just came back to see if there is any jewelry left to steal, just like that diamond ring she took when she was 18. The story of the diamond ring had followed me like a shadow for 14 years. But this time, I was ready. I smiled, a sharp, cold smile that didn't touch my eyes. They had no idea I was already recording everything. Every lie, every whisper, every betrayal, all evidence for the storm I was about to unleash. I stepped around Viva, ignoring her sputtering indignation, and walked into the main living room. The house was packed, air thick with body heat and judgment. Church mothers whispered behind their fans, their eyes darting from me to Viva and back again. I knew the stories they were telling. I had heard them before, but this time I held the power. And then I saw it. On Viva's left hand, glinting in a beam of sunlight, filtering through the heavy drapes, was the diamond ring, the same European-cut platinum ring with sapphires that had been the reason for my exile. My chest tightened, hot and sharp. Years of injustice flashed before my eyes. I pretended to check my phone, subtly zooming in and snapping high-resolution photos of her hand. The shutter sound was silent, but the evidence screamed. Viva froze, her eyes darting around the room, realizing her mistake. It's a gift from Chad," she stammered, panic creeping into her voice. I smiled, coldly. "We will see about that, Auntie. Big Mama filed appraisal documents in 1998, and this setting is one of a kind." Before she could lie further, the back door swung open. Chad entered, bringing a gust of stale cigarette smoke and hot, humid air. He was tall, handsome in a worn, faded way, with a too-wide smile and a suit that caught the light like it had been pressed for a photo shoot. He didn't look like a man mourning his grandmother. He looked like a man ready to close a deal. "What's all the tension for, ladies?" Chad boomed, clapping his hands together. He walked toward Keisha, planting a kiss on her cheek as if nothing had happened. The room seemed to tilt, everyone holding their breath, waiting to see the next move. And that was when I knew. The hardest case of my life had just begun. 14 years of lies, deception, and betrayal were about to be methodically dismantled, not with anger, but with cold, calculated evidence. The return was just the beginning. The room remained tense, a heavy silence pressing against my shoulders as everyone processed the revelation. Viva's gasp had echoed in my ears, a mixture of shock and fear. Her composure, always so polished and commanding, now wavered like a candle flame in the wind. I could see her claws retract, her defenses faltering under the weight of truth, and under my gaze. Keisha lounged on the sofa arm, her sweet tea still clutched in her hand. She had always acted older than her years, spoiled and entitled, her sneer a permanent fixture from childhood. "Nice bag, Nia," she drawled, trying to mask her nervousness. "Is it real? Or did you steal that too?" I didn't flinch. My eyes scanned the room, noting who was watching, who was whispering, who had already taken sides. "It's real, Keisha," I said smoothly, voice level and unwavering. "Just like my job. Maybe one day you should try earning something for yourself." Her lips pressed into a tight line. No comeback came, and I allowed myself the briefest flicker of satisfaction. Every insult thrown at me over the years had been recorded in my memory. Every lie, every betrayal, every judgment. They were all evidence now. I moved closer to Viva, who clutched her floral platter of eggs like a shield. Her eyes darted from me to the crowd, desperate for support. "I changed her sheets. I fed her when she couldn't feed herself. Where were you, Nia? Gone off to your high and mighty life in Chicago." I held her gaze evenly. "I was surviving, Auntie. And while I was surviving, Big Mama made sure I had everything I needed to succeed. You stole that from me too. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Church mothers fanned themselves furiously, exchanging knowing looks. She's bold, one muttered. After everything she did, another whispered, shaking her head. But I knew their whispers meant nothing. I had the power now, the evidence, the knowledge, the skills, and the patience to wait for the perfect moment. Then I saw it again, the diamond ring glinting on Viva's finger. It was the same one that had destroyed my teenage years, the reason I had been branded a thief and cast out. My pulse quickened, but my expression remained calm, analytical. I subtly lifted my phone, snapping more high-resolution photos, each click silent but deadly. "This is amazing," I said, voice carrying just enough to reach the room. "That ring, lost for so many years, somehow reappears on the day of the funeral. A miracle indeed." Viva's face drained of color. She tried to cover the ring with her other hand, eyes darting around the room. "It's a gift from Chad," she stammered. But I had already memorized every detail of the appraisal documents Big Mama had filed in 1998. This setting was one of a kind. The lie was obvious. And there was Chad, entering like a storm through the back door, unaware, or pretending to be unaware, of the tension. He brought with him the faint smell of stale cigarettes and ambition. He smiled too wide, his presence adding an unpredictable element to the gathering. Every family member instinctively tried to adjust, repositioning themselves like chess pieces on a board. I could feel the momentum shifting. The whispers had grown louder, the eyes on me sharper. I was no longer the shy girl who had been sent away. I was a strategist, a hunter, and this house had become my battlefield. Keisha, noticing her mother's panic, tried to recover control. "Nia, you've returned to disrupt a family gathering, a moment of mourning. That's shameful." I smiled, letting my words land like a hammer. "I didn't come to disrupt, Keisha. I came to see if there's anything left to reclaim. And now I know there is. Not just what's mine, but the truth your mother has hidden for years." Every eye in the room shifted between us, judgment and curiosity intermingling. I could hear the mental gears turning, the realization dawning slowly on them. The little girl they had judged, the grandchild they had cast aside, had returned. And she was armed not with anger, but with undeniable proof. Viva's composure was gone now. Her floral plate lay abandoned on the carpet, the eggs scattered like tiny accusations. I took a step closer, my gaze locking onto hers. "This family," I said softly, "has spent years rewriting the story to make me the villain. But today, that story ends." The room seemed to hold its breath, anticipation thick as syrup in the southern heat. I could feel the first waves of victory building, quiet but unstoppable. Every whisper, every glance, every hushed conversation was now part of my evidence, my arsenal, my quiet revolution. And I knew this was just the beginning. The diamond on Viva's finger caught the sunlight streaming through the drapes, glinting like a dagger aimed straight at my heart. 14 years of lies, false accusations, and exile had culminated in this one moment. That ring had haunted my dreams, whispered in my nightmares, and been the wedge between me and a family that was supposed to love me. And now, there it was, dangling smugly on the hand of the woman who had stolen it. I pretended to check a message on my phone, casually positioning the camera to zoom in on the ring. Click. Another photo. Click. Each silent shutter captured the truth in high resolution, a visual indictment that could not be denied. Viva's hand twitched as she realized what I was doing, her panic barely concealed beneath her floral dress and oversized hat. "This is incredible," I said aloud, letting my words drift through the room. After all these years, the ring believed to be lost forever. And yet here it is. A miracle indeed. Viva's face drained of color. She stammered, covering the ring with her other hand. It's a gift from Chad, she blurted, voice cracking under the weight of her own lies. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my tone measured, cold, and deliberate. Really, Auntie? Because Big Mama filed appraisal documents back in 1998. This setting is one of a kind. It belongs to her, and by extension, to me. Whispers erupted across the room. Church mothers leaned forward on velvet sofas, their eyes darting between me and Viva. Cousins whispered in clusters, eyebrows raised, mouths twitching with anticipation. Even Keisha's smirk faltered, her sweet tea forgotten. The tide was turning. I stepped closer, letting my presence dominate the space. You've spent 14 years rewriting history, I said, my voice low but piercing, blaming me for theft you committed, painting me as the villain, while you were the thief in plain sight. Viva's lips quivered. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her hands shook slightly, betraying the composure she had clung to for decades. The floral platter of eggs had been abandoned, evidence of her failed performance as the dutiful moral caretaker. The moment was electric, charged with silent anticipation. Every church mother, every cousin, every nosy auntie in the room seemed to collectively inhale, waiting for the next revelation. I could almost hear the gears turning in their minds, the uncomfortable shift from judgment to doubt. Then, as if on cue, Chad entered the room through the back door. The air shifted again, carrying the faint smell of stale cigarettes and old cologne. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a too-wide smile and a presence that demanded attention. He approached Keisha, planting a perfunctory kiss on her cheek, completely oblivious, or intentionally indifferent, to the tension spiraling around him. I watched him carefully, mentally taking notes on the family, dynamics his presence affected. His arrival highlighted the cracks in the household. Viva's panic deepened. She darted her eyes toward him, trying to find an ally to salvage her crumbling story. But Chad either didn't notice or didn't care, and the power shift was undeniable. I turned back to Viva, raising my phone as if checking a message again. Click. "This ring, Auntie," I said, letting the words hang in the humid air like smoke, "is not a gift. It was stolen, and I have the proof to prove it." Viva's eyes widened, her panic escalating. You're lying. That's ridiculous." I smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "No, Auntie, I'm very serious. I have the appraisal documents, photographs, and the testimony of Big Mama's closest friends and bank records. This ends today, not with anger, not with yelling, but with facts." Keisha tried to interject, her voice dripping with defensiveness. "Nia, don't ruin the funeral. Can't you let the family grieve in peace?" "Grief is a luxury I can't afford while my legacy was stolen," I replied, my eyes scanning the room, making sure everyone heard. "This family has spent years telling stories about me that aren't true. Today, the truth comes out." The room was alive with tension, electric and suffocating. Church mothers whispered behind their fans, cousins nudged each other, and even Viva's closest allies faltered under the weight of undeniable evidence. I could feel the momentum shifting, the narrative finally tilting in my favor. For the first time in 14 years, I felt the exhilarating pulse of control. Every lie my family had told, every accusation they had thrown at me, every judgment they had passed, it was all crumbling, and it was happening on my terms. I lowered my phone, keeping my eyes locked on Viva. "The time for games is over," I said, my voice soft but resolute. "The diamond ring, the college funds, the lies, everything will be accounted for, and everyone in this room will know the truth." Viva's shoulders slumped, her composure shattered. Keisha's face twisted with disbelief. Chad, still smiling faintly, observed the scene with a calculating curiosity, unaware yet of the storm about to engulf the entire household. And I knew this was just the beginning. The diamond ring revelation had set the stage. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to expose every secret, every betrayal, every hidden agenda. 14 years of exile had taught me patience, cunning, and precision. And now, armed with proof and purpose, I was unstoppable. The funeral gathering, meant for mourning, had become a battlefield, and I had just fired the first shot. Chad's entrance shifted the entire room. He moved with an ease that suggested confidence, or perhaps indifference, and immediately drew attention without trying. The faint smell of stale cigarettes followed him, a subtle signature of a man whose life had been shaped by risk, charm, and calculated moves. He didn't look like someone mourning Big Mama. He looked like someone used to reading people, sizing them up, and calculating advantage. I watched him closely, mentally noting how his presence affected the room. Viva's panic deepened, her composure cracking further under scrutiny. Keisha's smirk faltered, replaced by an uncertain glance toward her mother. Even the church mothers seemed to tilt in his direction, curiosity overtaking judgment. Everyone was assessing him, and unknowingly, he became a wild card in the unfolding drama. "Ladies!" Chad boomed, clapping his hands as if he had just walked onto a stage. "What's all the tension for?" Viva, still clutching her floral plate as if it were armor, opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't know whether to confront him, appeal to him, or retreat. Her eyes darted toward me, silently pleading for support or distraction. But I gave her nothing. I stepped closer, letting my presence dominate the space. "Chad," I said smoothly, my voice carrying just enough authority. "I see you've arrived. Perfect timing." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued, not immediately understanding the implications. "Perfect timing for what?" "For the truth," I said. "This family has spent 14 years rewriting history, blaming me for theft and deceit. Today, we set the record straight, starting with the diamond ring." Chad's gaze shifted to Viva's left hand, where the ring gleamed like a silent accusation. His brow furrowed slightly, a flicker of interest, or was it calculation, crossing his face. He didn't speak, but his presence alone added weight to the confrontation. Viva's lips quivered, panic giving way to anger. "Nia, how dare you? You come into this house, disrupt the funeral, and accuse me in front of everyone." "I accuse you with proof," I said, my tone icy. "Appraisal documents, photographs, bank statements, every detail Big Mama entrusted to me before she passed. You lied, you stole, and you've spent years trying to cover it up." Keisha shifted uncomfortably, her sweet tea abandoned on the sofa. "Nia, enough. This is a family gathering, not a courtroom." "The family gathering is over," I replied firmly. "This is a reckoning, and it starts now." Chad finally spoke, his voice calm but deliberate. "Interesting," he said, eyes flicking between Viva and me. "So, this is what's been brewing under the surface?" "Yes," I said. 14 years of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. And now, everyone in this room will see it for what it truly is." The church mothers whispered among themselves, their judgment turning into doubt. Cousins nudged each other, eyebrows raised, suddenly aware that the story they had believed for over a decade might have been a fabrication. Even Viva's closest allies wavered, unsure whether to continue defending a narrative that now seemed fragile. I could feel the momentum shifting, a subtle but undeniable power rising within me. 14 years ago, I had been powerless, cast out into the world with nothing but a backpack. Now, armed with evidence, patience, and strategy, I held the upper hand. Chad stepped closer, casually observing the room. "You've got guts," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I like that." I didn't respond, letting the tension speak for itself. Viva's face was a mixture of fury and fear, Keisha's sneer replaced by uncertainty. and the rest of the family hovered in silent judgment. Every whisper, every sideways glance, every twitching eyebrow became part of the story I was collecting, the evidence I was gathering. This family, I said softly, thrives on gossip, manipulation, and appearances, but appearances are only as strong as the lies that hold them together. Today, those lies crumble. Viva's hands shook, her floral platter of eggs abandoned on the carpet. The diamond ring, the symbol of my exile, sparkled in the sunlight, powerless against the truth I now wielded. Chad, still observing, smiled faintly, a subtle acknowledgement that he understood the dynamics at play. He was unpredictable, yes, but he could also be an ally, or at least a witness to the unraveling of years of deceit. I knew the battle lines had been drawn, alliances were forming, secrets were surfacing, and every family member was being forced to confront their own complicity. I was no longer just reclaiming a diamond ring or college money. I was dismantling a dynasty of lies, one calculated move at a time. And the best part? They didn't even realize it yet. The stage was set, the players were in place, and I was ready to make my move. The air in Big Mama's mansion felt electric, charged with the weight of truths long buried and lies long told. Every whisper, every sideways glance, every guilty shift in posture had built up to this moment. The family's carefully constructed facade was cracking, and I was standing at the center, unshakable, armed with nothing but evidence, patience, and calculated strategy. Viva trembled, her floral platter discarded, her oversized hat sitting crooked on her head. The diamond ring on her finger sparkled in the sunlight like a beacon of her guilt. Keisha's sneer had vanished, replaced with apprehension, as she realized that the story she had believed and perpetuated for years was unraveling before her eyes. Chad, standing near the back, watched silently, the faint curl of a smile tugging at his lips, as if he appreciated the precision of my approach. I cleared my throat and let my voice carry through the room. This family has thrived for years on manipulation, lies, and stolen legacies, I began, pacing slowly so every eye remained locked on me. You told stories about me, painted me as a villain, cast me out, and claimed my inheritance for yourselves, but every story you told was false. Every accusation you made has now been documented, verified, and proven to be a lie. The room shifted uncomfortably. Church mothers fanned themselves nervously, cousins whispered anxiously, and even some of Viva's closest allies looked at each other with doubt in their eyes. The power dynamic had changed, and it was palpable. I lifted my phone, projecting the photos of the diamond ring onto the large living room screen we had set up for Big Mama's memorial slideshow. The glimmering European-cut platinum ring with sapphires was undeniable. This ring, stolen from me at 18, I said, letting the words linger, was used as evidence to justify my exile. 14 years ago, I was thrown onto the streets, branded a thief, and left with nothing. And today, we see who the real thief is. Viva's face turned crimson. Her lips quivered, and she opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Silence, I said firmly. No more lies. Everything you claim to be true is now publicly documented. I moved to the fireplace, pulling out a stack of folders, bank statements, appraisal documents, witness testimonies, every scrap of evidence Big Mama had left behind, every ledger entry, every hidden note I had unearthed over months of research. Big Mama trusted me, I said, flipping open a folder. She knew I would see the truth and hold you accountable, and now I will. Keisha attempted a weak retort. Nia, you can't just... I didn't flinch. I ignored her entirely, letting the evidence speak for itself. Every document, every photograph, every recording I had made over the past 2 hours was laid bare. The murmurs in the room grew louder, not in defense of Viva or Keisha, but in shock. People were realizing that the family narrative they had clung to for years was a lie. Chad stepped forward, eyes sharp. Well, he said, voice calm, Someone's been busy. Yes, I said. I've been busy reclaiming what was stolen from me and exposing the deceit that poisoned this family for over a decade. And now, everyone will be held accountable. Viva's composure crumbled completely. She dropped to her knees in front of the mantel, covering her face with her hands. Keisha stood frozen, staring at the documents as if their weight might crush her. The rest of the family looked on, powerless, trapped by the undeniable facts. I turned to the room, letting my words resonate. This is not just about inheritance or jewelry. This is about truth, justice, and finally ending the cycle of lies. 14 years ago, I was powerless. Today, I am unstoppable. Every lie you've told, every manipulation, every act of theft, it stops here. The room was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the air conditioning fighting against the heat. Then slowly, murmurs began to ripple through the crowd, not whispers of judgment, but acknowledgments of truth. Heads nodded hesitantly. Eyes that once glared with disdain now held recognition, perhaps even shame. I felt a sense of satisfaction, tempered by the cold precision of my methods. This was not vengeance fueled by rage. This was justice delivered methodically, strategically, with evidence and patience as my weapons. Chad approached me, offering a faint nod of approval. "Impressive," he said quietly. "You didn't just expose the lies, you controlled the room while doing it." I allowed myself a brief smile. "Thank you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But this is only the beginning. Restoring what's mine and ensuring the truth is known requires continued vigilance. Lies don't disappear overnight." Viva, broken and defeated, could no longer protest. Keisha, humbled, seemed to shrink under the weight of her own complicity. And the rest of the family, who had once held judgment over me, now had nothing but the truth staring back at them. I walked toward the front door, glancing once more at Big Mama's portrait above the fireplace. Her serene, knowing smile seemed to approve. 14 years of exile, humiliation, and injustice had been corrected, not with anger, but with evidence, patience, and careful planning. The reckoning had begun, and for the first time, I felt free. Not just free of the family's lies, but free of the burden of the past. Today, I reclaimed my legacy. Today, I claimed what was rightfully mine. And as I stepped back into the humid Atlanta air, suitcase in hand, I knew one thing for certain: I had won.